Well, hey there. Good morning, Indiana. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the unapologetically progressive Sunday morning news show for the Hoosier State. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I'm broadcasting from Bloomington. Got a packed show, another one this week, and I got some great guests here with me to talk about it. Say real first before we bring everybody in, a little quick housekeeping. You can find me on social media personally at who'sleft.us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. It is at Who's Left on all of the rest. And big news, of course, we are here today celebrating our first show on the new Progressive Indiana Network. All of my guests this morning are members of this little cooperative group we've got going on here. We're going to talk a little bit about it at the top of the show. You know what? Let's go ahead and bring everybody in. First, you know her from social media. There is the recovered Republican, Brianna Newhart. Welcome.
Good morning.
So good to see you. So good to have you as a part of this network. We have also got here with us, returning to the show, our good friend, Tabitha Zeigler. Welcome,
Hi,
Tabitha.
guys.
So great to have you with us this morning. As always, appreciate you being back. And Derek Holder from the Hold 'em Accountable podcast, another PIN member, was supposed to be here with us this morning. He is a late scratch. Coaches say he is a day-to-day decision, but aren't we all? However, stepping in last moment, another PIN member, Sierra Martin. Sierra, welcome. Good to have you.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. I will try to do my best to fill in for Derek.
Always good to welcome fresh blood to the show. So, listen, let's just tell folks what we're up to at PIN here a little bit, if they don't mind a little bit of shameless self-promotion. So, I started the Who's Left project about 3 years ago, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and honestly, to tell you the truth, I still don't, but we're figuring it out as we go. And the one real pleasure of this journey has been finding other like-minded Hoosiers who sort of had the same epiphany I did. Like, man, there are not enough people on the left putting our ideas and our policies and our progressive vision into the information space. And we've found each other, and many of us have come together to form this new container organization, Progressive Indiana Network, which is going to bring you content from all of us. So technically, for those of you who are visiting our website or whatever, right now, progressiveindiana.net is just pointing to my website, who'sleft.us. Got a little bit of background stuff to do. Maybe a process over the next couple weeks as we get everything moved in. We've all moved before. There are virtual boxes all over the place that need to be unpacked, but we're doing this thing. We are flying as we're building the plane. But I think that covers it. Brianna, talk about what you are looking forward to here at Progressive Indiana Network.
Oh, looking forward to that is not at all what I prepared.
You prepare. You go on.
Looking forward to. Well, first, I just want to tell everybody who I am a little bit. So my name's Brianna. It rhymes with Indiana. Easy way to remember. Or people can call me Bree. I go by Bree in real life pretty consistently. But for me, this journey started pretty much in 2020 when my late husband passed away from COVID. And I started using TikTok as a place to put my grief, like a safe space, because when your spouse dies, you have a lot of feelings, and I didn't have enough spaces to put them because it was 2020 and there was no support. And so I started doing this and started getting some followers pretty quickly. And, there were times off and on where it felt safe, but didn't feel safe to be online and trying to figure out where I was. But eventually, after Donald Trump won again, I decided that we shouldn't have to be afraid to say what we want to say in this country. And if I am afraid to go on and say my opinion online, then we don't have the freedom of speech. And I need to be doing that. And I need to be getting others to do the same and standing up, because there's so many things that are wrong. But what I'm looking forward to from PIN is just collaborating with some of the other people. I've already collaborated with Tabitha, and there's some other people that are coming up on the list as well. And I know you and I have done a podcast as well, Scott, and just getting to know other Democrats throughout Indiana, because there are more of us than people realize. And that's a big part of my platform, is just showing people we exist. Which you can find me now on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and recently, and Substack. And then I also have a podcast that is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts now under The Recovered Republican.
And you will be able to find all of Bree's stuff at our progressiveindiana.net home, which is built upon Substack. All of our stuff will be there, linked to it or natively. So, Tabitha, how about you? What are you looking forward to here?
Well, I think it's interesting that Brianna mentioned grief, because I think that's sort of a large part of how I got into this. Grief, authenticity. You can hear my little goblin in the background. So what I'm really good at is authenticity, rolling with it, like on the fly. And the authenticity part is what I'm really excited about in PIN, because I'm trying to find a space where people can come together and do what they need to do. And like Brianna said, meet other Democrats, but mostly just be real, tell the truth. And I feel really fortunate that I found like-minded people here.
And Sierra, you're not going to be publicly facing with us, but you're going to be maybe doing some stuff on the back end, doing some research. And I'm super glad to have you on board in that regard. What are you looking forward to?
I am excited that there's going to be a place for Indiana politics and news and culture for people, because I know that that's something that I wanted when I was younger. I'm not that old. I haven't been paying attention to politics that long, I guess. 10 years? Okay, wow. Time moves differently post-COVID. But yeah, I just know that in like high school, I was really wanting more progressive, more leftist content, and growing up in Indiana, there isn't that. So I'm just excited that finally there is a space for people to come and get the news from a progressive lens.
Absolutely, and we are glad to provide that service. It is desperately needed, and we're learning how to do it, but the need is absolutely there. We're in addition to the podcasts and the articles and things that we're already doing, we're really looking forward to being able to do things like host town halls, virtual town halls, maybe even real life town halls. Debates are something we're going to try and pursue as we head into the Democratic primary in May. So, listen, I would love to keep the shameless promotion train going. And also, let's see here, do want to give everybody our handles on all the social medias there, which are posted on the screen. It is simply Progressive Indiana Network on many of your social media sites. However, on X, where we're not really going to spend any time, but we did want to, grab our brand's handle before somebody else did, as well as Blue Sky and TikTok. The handle is PIN, P-I-N, Indiana. All right, great. Now, enough of the uncomfortable commercializing. Let's dive into this week's news, and a lot going on. So, on Wednesday, Chief Justice John Roberts issued a report on the state of the federal judiciary, which is tradition. They do this every year. And here I'm quoting from Civil Discourse with Joyce Vance. The Chief Justice touched on some of the most important issues the judiciary faces today without ever getting in to the point. Reading the report, you wouldn't know that the judiciary has been, quite frankly, under attack by this president. He writes as though he bears no responsibility for handing over unprecedented power to the president, to say nothing of the delay and ultimate grant of immunity for criminal prosecution that facilitated Trump's return to the office. Roberts acknowledges none of that. Instead, He lauds judicial independence without ever saying that it's only necessary for him to do so because the president and his minions are challenging judges whose decisions they dislike, as though that's how this is supposed to work. The Chief Justice concludes his report, quote, as we approach the semi-quincentennial, that one's a mouthful, of our nation's birth, it is worth recalling the words of President Calvin Coolidge, spoken a century ago on the occasion of America's sesquicentennial. Amid all the clash of conflicting interests, amid all the welter of partisan politics, every American can turn for solace and consolation to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, with the assurance and confidence that those two great charters of freedom and justice remain firm and unshaken. End quote. Roberts adds in his own comment, true then, true now. And look, the Trump administration is backing down, pulling back National Guard troops from Los Angeles, Portland, and Chicago. This from the LA Times. Last week, the U.S. Supreme Court handed Trump a temporary defeat, blocking him from deploying the National Guard in Chicago. In their ruling, the justices said the power to deploy troops domestically is only given to the president in exceptional circumstances. Now, this back and forth followed a brief filed with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit on Tuesday, in which the Justice Department lawyers said they formally withdrew a request to keep the troops under federal control while the appeal proceeds. A subsequent order Wednesday from the appeals court returned control of the California National Guard to Newsom. Now, of course, the president said the decision was based solely on what he described as greatly reduced crime in those cities and left open the possibility of future federal intervention. You know, he can't admit that he's backing down, right? So, Brianna, behold the guardrails of democracy. They are holding. They work, right?
I mean, I guess it seems like, we're saying that, yeah, see, we still have freedoms because Trump is, bringing us back to where we should have been the whole freaking time. I mean, there was no need for him to send these troops into any of these cities. He claimed that it was because crime rates were soaring, but we know if we actually look at the data, all of these cities are at historical lows for crime rates. So him saying this is just made up in a fantasy, essentially, that he has created to try to villainize the left because these are blue cities that he's going after. It's very clear he's trying to be a dictator. He's trying to, force his way in without doing the, unaliving of people, essentially, is what it seems like. He's trying to just assert his dominance without doing the work. And then they're just like, see, we're not that bad, but it's like, just ignore all the people that we just, incarcerated without any due process or anything like that. Or the fact that you've been terrorizing citizens for months. It's ridiculous. The guardrails are not working. They're not strong enough.
Sierra, I understand it is your intention to study law. Do you follow the courts? What do you think of Mr. Roberts? Is the Constitution, quote, firm and unshaken?
The Constitution is rotting. We are seeing constitutional rot. It is not a self-fulfilling document. We need people like Chief Justice John Roberts and the rest of the court to wake up, see the moment we're in, and respond accordingly. And they haven't. And the fact that Chief Justice John Roberts just sits there and says the court is above politics is so farcical. It's like, I can't even laugh anymore. I just want to cry because it is just so ridiculous. They rubber stamp everything this president's doing. We are, like Brianna said, there is no due process happening. Where are the courts stepping in with this, saying, hey, we have a constitution right here. Due process is something that makes this country great. We do, you have a right to have your case adjudicated, to have the charges brought before you, and in a group of your peers, have a verdict read. And none of that is happening for these people, for these migrants that are being picked off the streets, for the boats in Venezuela that we are just, bombing. I just think it's just laughable.
Yeah. Tabitha, let me get your comment.
Well, all I can think of, I find it really ironic that all of this stuff is coming up with the Epstein victims. I don't want to say victims, they're survivors, right? But all I can think of is America is in an abusive relationship. Like, this is like a guy that has hit you so much that's trying to divert attention from the fact that he's hitting you. And then the rest of the family is telling you, oh, hey, it didn't happen like that. Or you should just forget about it. Or it wasn't that bad. Like, people got stomped by horses in LA. Like, babies were gassed. This like massive amount of gaslighting from the American government to the populace is so obscene that it's fascinating to me. It's like the psychologists and psychiatrists of the country must just be having a field day with the narcissism here.
Yeah, it really is a case study in so many. You remember The Simpsons where they talk about Mr. Burns and like being so sick and all the various diseases can't get through the door, right? Trump is that, but on the psychological spectrum. It is ironic. I think that a couple days after the Chief Justice is talking about the Constitution being firm and unshaken, that the President of the United States launched an unconstitutional regime change war in Venezuela. Hey, thanks for the extra work yesterday. I thought I had my script done, by the way, because it's about me, right? It's not about democracy or rule of law. In a late night raid, the U.S. captured, and that word's doing some work. You could say kidnapped Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores and flew them out of the South American country during a pre-dawn assault on Caracas and the surrounding region. Now, it was not immediately clear what the legal and constitutional authority was for the military operation and capture and trial of a sovereign head of state, nor was it clear whether Trump consulted Congress beforehand. Newsflash, he did not. This from The Hill, after I add my initial comment. This is not their comment. So Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, barely able to speak with Trump's tiny mushroom dick in his mouth, said the following, quote, Congress isn't notified when the FBI is going to arrest a drug trafficker or cyber criminal here in the United States, nor should Congress be notified when the executive branch is executing arrests on indicted persons, adding, Congress doesn't need to be notified every time the executive branch is making an arrest. So, Brianna, they're just treating the kidnapping of a foreign head of state like a routine drug charge?
I think this is extremely short-sighted. I think this is an act of war because it is. I mean, you can't just kidnap someone's president and wife and not expect that country to see that as an act of war. I just don't see how they could see it any other way. I wasn't aware that the US government was meant to act like a terrorist group organization, kidnapping, government officials in the middle of the night, like the people that we allegedly are fighting against. So that's very interesting to me, and they definitely need congressional approval to go to war. Pretty sure to declare war that we need to do that, and this is an act of war. So I think that this is just another giant overstep on the executive branch's part, and this is where the Supreme Court should be stepping in and should be kiboshing this. But instead, they're letting him have free reign, and he's going to lead us into World War III. And I think this is all about oil. I read somewhere that Venezuela has the most oil reserves in the world. I don't think it's a coincidence that they have the most oil reserves in the world. And then all of a sudden, these Venezuelan boats are taking all this fentanyl into Mexico. And that's where our fentanyl problem is coming. Yes, I'm sure that's what it is. I'm sorry. When you're looking at things, you have to look at things and say, is this the most logical solution, logical conclusion? Does this explanation make sense? Because the more in depth you have to go into this explanation, the more likely it is it's a lie. And you need to start, everyone needs to start looking at things this way. So if it's 2 or 3 steps to get to what he's saying, that's probably not what actually is going on. What's going on is they want that oil, and they want to get a reason. They're trying to create a reason to go to war with Venezuela so we can get this oil, because I'm sure they said, no, you can't have our oil.
Well, not just that, Brianna. I was going to mention, Scott and I are old enough for this. So in 1989, we have Panama. They've already got their sights on Greenland, where there's a bunch of rare earth minerals for all of our little oligarch, bro-tech, whatever they want to be. And like the writing's on the wall. We've got several examples from the past of the U.S. providing arms to guerrilla warfare to overthrow governments or whatever. And then now we want to bitch about all of the brown migrants coming in to the U.S. seeking work, seeking stability after we fucked up their countries and their economies. And I think America has a short memory for whatever reason. The fact that we are actively trying to de-educate the population, and it's always smoke and mirrors, don't read a book, let's burn all the books in the libraries or get rid of the books. I mean, all of this stuff is just piling on top of one another. And if you're only getting your news from Fox News, or you are just believing in the empirical force that is representing our government right now, that's not real news. That's not good critical thinking. Open a book.
Yeah, so they've taken Maduro and they've got him in New York. So Maduro and Flores are expected to be taken to the Metropolitan Detention Center. It's a federal facility in Brooklyn to be housed. It's one of the few detention centers in the U.S. with the capacity for high security defendants. This coming from CBS News. It is known for housing other high profile defendants like Joaquin Guzman, El Chapo, Luigi Mangione, Puffy Combs, and Ghislaine Maxwell, in a superseding indictment filed in the Southern District of New York against Maduro, members of his family, and his cabinet. The U.S. is accusing him of conspiracy to commit narco-terrorism and to import cocaine. He is also accused of possession of and conspiracy to possess, quote, machine guns and destructive devices. This is an old, 1930s era law, by the way, and this is according to the indictment unsealed on Saturday by Attorney General Pam Bondi. Now, as one would expect, Republicans are completely behind Trump on this action, while Democrats are decrying it as unjustified. From ABC, House Speaker Mike Johnson called the military action decisive and a justified operation that will protect American lives. Senate Majority Leader John Thune argued Trump's actions were undertaken as part of the execution of a valid Department of Justice warrant. Now, Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, one of the Senate's most vocal advocates for congressional war authorizations, issued a scathing indictment of Trump's actions in Venezuela and called for Congress to take up his resolution that would block the use of the U.S. armed forces to engage in hostilities within or against Venezuela unless authorized by Congress. Like in the Constitution. Kaine, along with Senators Schiff and Republican co-sponsor Rand Paul of Kentucky, introduced this resolution last month to block the use of forces unless authorized by Congress. That legislation is ready to be called for a vote. The Senate returns to Washington on Monday, while the House returns on Tuesday. Another Kentucky libertarian, Representative Thomas Massey, posted on X, quote, "If this action were constitutionally sound, the Attorney General wouldn't be tweeting that they've arrested the president of a sovereign country and his wife for possessing guns in violation of a 1934 U.S. firearms law." Another Republican dissenter, Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, posted, quote, "If U.S. military action and regime change in Venezuela was really about saving American lives from deadly drugs, then why hasn't the Trump administration taken action against Mexican cartels?" Interesting place to take that, but noted. She added, quote, and if prosecuting narco-terrorists is a high priority, then why did President Trump pardon the former Honduran president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was convicted and sentenced for 45 years for trafficking hundreds of tons of cocaine into Venezuela, or into America? Ironically, cocaine is the same drug that Venezuela primarily traffics into the U.S. And you hate to say it, but good point to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Pick your hypocrisy, right? Nancy Pelosi is echoing Greene in criticizing Trump for the Hernandez pardon. Are you concerned about attacking sovereign neighbors? We seem to criticize Russia for having done so. They are criticizing this attack on Venezuela because, double standards. And hey, are you concerned about democratic legitimacy? Well, the U.S. still maintains close working relationships with at least 9 authoritarian countries, according to the Carnegie Endowment for Peace. Sierra, pick your hypocrisy.
Having Donald Trump say that this is all about drugs in Venezuela and not oil, when he promised oil companies and oil executives on the campaign trail, donate billions and I'll be kind to you. It seems like this would be the investment, the return on their investment. It is so ridiculous that we're going to say it is because of the drugs and then turn around and pardon a drug trafficker and the former president of Honduras. And it is also super weird to be agreeing in some form or fashion with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, if even she can see the hypocrisy, it's got to be pretty glaring, I think.
Yeah, and really, Brianna mentioned about this earlier. This is about the oil. Trump says the U.S. will run Venezuela, and
that's never problematic.
And sell seized oil. And this is from NPR, quoting Trump. We're there now, but we're going to stay until such a time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such a time, and we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place.
Because historically, we're good at nation building. I mean, it's giving Iraq 2.0 with it. Just the nation building slide just has 3 letters on it, just TBD. We're just not sure.
Yeah, right. And so Trump said a group of people would step in to run Venezuela, including Secretary of State Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, all the best people, and added U.S. oil companies would have military backup as they move into the region. Look, subtle, right? I mean, he's spelling it out for you. He says, additionally, we're not afraid to put boots on the ground. And we have to. We've had boots on the ground last night at a very high level. Actually, we're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it, but we're going to make sure that the country is run properly. So, I don't know. Bree, close us out with this section.
I mean, I think that it's pretty obvious. This is just another example of why I became a recovered Republican. I started looking into what the politicians were saying and looking at what they were actually doing and what the actual impact of what they were doing was. And what I found is a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of lies and a lot of smoke and mirrors. And this is just more of that. And just like Sierra said, if Marjorie Taylor Greene can see the hypocrisy, then anyone should be able to see the hypocrisy.
Right? Exactly. And look, listen, the big part of Trump's campaign last year was, I'm the peace president. I've stopped 7 wars, 8 wars, 10 wars. And we don't want these regime change wars anymore, right? He said that in the campaign. And now, behold, you don't like, Venezuela, not enough for you. Well, he's threatening a regime change war in Iran as well. So they've been having protests over there. This is from Al Jazeera. So far, at least 7 people have been killed and 44 have been arrested since shopkeepers in Tehran first shuttered their businesses last Sunday to protest against Iran's economic crisis. What began as a single protest about the collapse of the Iranian economy by shopkeepers in the city's Grand Bazaar had spread to 17 of Iran's 31 provinces by New Year's Eve, with students and demonstrators from across Iranian society joining the wave of demonstrations. Now, Tehran's previous hardline responses to public unrest have been marked by the deaths of protesters. However, so far, despite a number of isolated clashes between protesters and security forces, President Pezeshkian's government has held back from an outright crackdown and appears ready to listen to the legitimate demands of protesters. But Trump says the U.S. will intervene if Iran kills peaceful protesters. From NBC, quote, if Iran kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded and ready to go, Trump said in an overnight post on Truth Social. Iranian officials fired back, warning that U.S. intervention would spark regional chaos and make American forces in the Middle East legitimate targets. Gee, what if instead of killing the protesters, they just shot them in the legs like Trump wanted to do with protesters here in our country in 2020, Tabitha?
You know, all of this is hysterical to me. Not hysterical, haha, like hysterical, ironic, because you have a rich guy from an immigrant country. You have some other people hanging out that are from immigrant countries, which I don't have a problem with immigrants, but just kind of laying the framework for people sitting at home, right? You have a bunch of old guys wanting to play Battleship, go boom, boom all over the world, and go into other countries and be like, right, this looks like a chessboard now. It looks like a chessboard for rich people that don't care about the normal citizens. And I will tell you this because I had classmates that went. If you're old enough to remember Iraq, Afghanistan, or whatever, they're going to come to places like this to get your sons, nephews, daughters, what have you, if they'll even allow your daughters to serve. So it doesn't matter whether it's Venezuela, Iran, Greenland, or wherever else on the globe that he feels like lighting up next. This is practice. This is practice for a brutal dictator. And speaking of dictators, if we can go into Venezuela, like Zelensky says, he's like, hey, why don't you come and get Putin? Like, we've watched all that play out. There are still Ukrainian children in Russia right now that we used to have a list for that have gone missing. There's just so many things here that shooting protesters in the knees, that's awful, but it doesn't really hold a candle to all of the things. And the fact that they're willing to shoot our own citizens, they don't give a shit about what happens in Iran, especially if they're going to talk to the Israeli government and Mossad or whatever, and then boom, like, once again, not really ask Congress. We're just going to like fly by the seat of our pants and go drop a bomb somewhere. Like, these people don't give a damn about what the American public thinks. They don't care about any other citizenship, like any citizenry in the world. They don't care about the military. They care about themselves. They care about enriching themselves, extracting resources, and giving everything to their pals. And it seems clear that like Putin's a pal and Maduro was not.
And listen, we talked about this a little bit before we went live. Sierra, if we're just removing heads of state because they are autocratic and dictatorial, I welcome Canadian Prime Minister Carney to come take our guy off of our hands. Please, I welcome our Canadian overlords.
Yeah, it is definitely a super dangerous precedent to set, to say that you can just come with some flimsy pretext for it and say, well, look, the Venezuelan people, they didn't like their leader. In Iran, they don't like their leader. So we, the benevolent Americans, will come in and we will liberate you. And it worked so well in Iraq, and it will work so well in Iran. And I'm sure it will work so well in Venezuela. And the draft dodger in charge will send American sons and daughters and American blood and treasure and put us more into debt. all in the name of exactly what Tabitha said. We're extracting resources for the power and wealth accumulation of a very few people.
Yeah, absolutely. And, listen, I'm going to move on to our next story here. It is ironic, targeting these leaders for their undemocratic way when Trump is engaging in collective punishment of his people here at home. So the administration is freezing federal child care funds to all states until they provide more verification and administrative data about the programs in a move fueled by a series of fraud schemes at Minnesota daycare centers run by Somali residents. Now, this is from PBS. All 50 states will have to provide additional levels of verification and administrative data before they receive more funding from the Child Care and Development Fund, according to a U.S. Department of Health and Human Services spokesperson. However, before Minnesota can receive child care funds again, it will have to provide even more verification for child care centers in that state that are suspected of fraud, such as attendance and licensing records, past enforcement actions, and inspection reports. Now, this freeze comes in response to a viral video by a right wing provocateur from NPR. Nick Shirley, a 23-year-old self described independent YouTube journalist, and again, journalist is doing a lot of work there, posted a 42-minute video on X and YouTube the day after Christmas. In it, he and an older man, identified only as David, visit various seemingly empty daycare centers, bombarding Somali employees with questions and accusing them of not providing services to any children despite receiving public funds. The pair claim to have exposed over $110 million in fraud. Turns out this other guy, David, is a right wing lobbyist who once called Muslims, quote unquote, demons. This guy, turns out his full name is David Hoke or Hawk. Accounts bearing his name have a long online history posting about the Somali community in Minnesota. A TikTok and a recently deleted Instagram account posted almost exclusively on the subject, including derogatory statements about Somalis and Muslims. And I'm going to say some gross things right now, quoting Mr. Hawk. Quote, every Somali in Minnesota is engaged in fraud. All of them. In November, he posted, even the blacks, I hate even saying it like that, have had enough of the demon Muslims. More disgusting claims in this video. He says the allegedly stolen funds are being sent to terrorist organizations. He says we have to be careful because these people, referring to Somalis, are very violent. They're exceptionally violent. And he also says Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is guilty of misconduct with a public employee. Turns out, guys, many of the claims, I'm sure to your shock, are bullcrap. So Hasim Rashid over on Substack does a good job debunking this. So first, what Shirley allegedly uncovered is not new. Since 2022, several of these same daycare centers have been fined and shut down for violating the law. Local media in Minnesota has already reported on that alleged fraud and reported on subsequent FBI investigations. Second, former U.S. Attorney Andy Lugar is already on record rejecting Shirley's claim that any of the 70 people his office prosecuted had any ties whatsoever to terrorism in the United States or overseas. Third, in addition to local media and law enforcement already tackling this fraud, employees of the daycare centers themselves sounded the alarm well over a year ago. Shirley's claim that all Somalis think as one is both racist and unfounded. It's also worth noting that while Shirley claims Somalis are violent, Minnesota, with the largest population of Somalis in the United States, is one of the safest states in the country. And finally, for as much as Shirley insists fraud problems in Minnesota begin and end with Somalis, nowhere in his 42-minute propaganda piece does he admit, let alone acknowledge, that the accused ringleader, who was convicted of leading the largest prosecuted fraud in Minnesota, is a white woman named Amy Bach. Brianna, I don't even know where to begin.
Where to begin? Well, I mean, this is just another witch hunt for people who are trying to, confirm that their bias. They're trying to make their bias fit the narrative, right? And it doesn't really matter to them that this is an old news story or that it's already been taken care of because it fits their narrative. And that's the thing. That's why we need fact checking. If people aren't telling you why somebody is an expert in the field, you should be asking questions. Who is this person? Why are they an expert? I don't know who they are. Who are they? And when we don't ask those questions and instead it goes viral like it did, that ends up like sowing hate. That's what it does. It sows hate, and people will probably get attacked because of this. Somalian people will get attacked just like the people who were in COVID were getting attacked who were Asian, any kind of Asian person, because clearly it was their fault, and which is ridiculous in itself. But it's just people with these biases, and I don't know, it's just so annoying to me because there's so much more going on that I'm like, why is this what you're putting your energy into? When the world and the country is on fire, our Constitution is rotting. It's like, why? Why is hate so deeply sewed into your heart, I guess?
Tabitha, I don't know. What do you make of all this?
I've got lots of thoughts, and I'm just going to say initially what popped into my brain. Sounds like this David Hawk probably has a white hood hiding at home. And if he's so proud, like, I kind of feel like this about the races. Like, just own it. Be proud of it. You know, like, subscribe yourself to whatever, like, terrorist hate group, domestic hate group that you're a part of. That's what this sounds like to me. Like, ooh, scary brown people again. Like, I wonder, before he deleted these messages and these social media posts that he had, was he so offended by the Black people swinging from trees that we've had in the US? I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's like, which brown person are you going to align with at the moment that you're going to do hateful shit? Like, let's go into a daycare that serves children, and we're two grown men with cameras that these people don't know. If they tried to enter a white daycare, they would be told straight to go fuck off, and the police would be called. This would not even be a story if they were running around Minneapolis filming white daycares. So I find it really interesting that, you know, all of these people, they talk about all this stuff, they show a bunch of brown faces, but they miss the most important face that just happens to be white.
Yeah. Well, and some of the faces were masked, Tabitha. I mean, Sierra, a bunch of masked dudes show up at your daycare. I think the appropriate response is, don't let these guys in. Don't let them anywhere near here. Is it not?
I would hope so. I'm the mom of 2 small children, so I would sincerely hope so. But also, I do think it is very interesting that at the core of this, because I have a family member who sent me this story originally. They're a MAGA family member. Misuse of taxpayer dollars was what they were so upset about. And like you said, the most misuse of taxpayer dollars in Minnesota is actually by a white woman named Amy, did you say?
Yeah, Amy Bach.
Yeah, that sounds right. The largest case of Medicaid and Medicare fraud in U.S. history was Rick Scott in the early aughts. And they were fined, his company was fined like $1.7 billion. So like, clearly these small immigrant communities, these pockets of fraud or misuse of taxpayer dollars isn't really there. We're missing the forest for the trees. I think it's interesting that we're going to focus on that as a misuse of taxpayer dollars when I think, isn't the Pentagon in its 9th audit fail? I mean, there are just so many other more beneficial places that we could really be looking at if we were actually upset about misuse of taxpayer dollars, which I am. I don't think that is necessarily a partisan issue, being upset about misuse of taxpayer dollars. But instead of targeting pockets and communities, things that may not have a there, let's focus on the Pentagon. I mean, billions of dollars, and they're not getting their funds frozen until they can prove there's no bureaucratic extra red tape being added to them for their failure of, misuse of taxpayer dollars. So It's just so interesting to me.
Can I bring this back to the fact also that we're once again speaking about children? Like, this is money for children, irregardless of what color they are.
Yeah, because they're pro-birthers, not pro-lifers. So we care about children right up until they're born.
Yeah, and you mentioned Rick Scott, and if this Trump administration is so concerned about fraud, why has he pardoned so many convicted fraudsters? He himself is a convicted fraudster. I don't think fraud is the problem. This is either I don't know, is it simple anti-Somali bigotry or a hit job on Governor Walz, a potential 2028 candidate, or is this part of a pattern, a larger pattern of targeting Democrat-led states? Well, along those lines. So this week, on Tuesday, Trump used the first veto of his second term to kill a pipeline project to provide clean drinking water to Colorado's Eastern Plains, even though this is a largely conservative area. This story from the New York Times. So the administration has also cut off transportation money, relocated the Military Space Command, vowed to dismantle a leading climate and weather research center, and rejected disaster relief for rural counties hammered by floods and wildfires in what certainly looks like a politically motivated retribution against the Rocky Mountain state. If there were any doubts about Mr. Trump's sentiments toward the state's leaders, he posted a New Year's Eve message telling Governor Jared Polis, a Democrat, and the Republican district attorney in Mesa County, who prosecuted Trump ally Tina Peters, Mr. Daniel Rubenstein, to, quote, rot in hell. Now, we mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene, a far-right MAGA figure criticizing the president. In this story, we've got far-right MAGA figure Representative Lauren Boebert putting out a statement on Tuesday raising the possibility that the veto was retribution for her support of legislation that forced the release of documents related to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, saying, quote, I sincerely hope this veto has nothing to do with political retaliation for calling out corruption and demanding accountability. Many leaders in Colorado see the series of presidential moves as political payback for the state's refusal to free Ms. Peters, a former county clerk in western Colorado who was convicted of tampering with voting machines in a failed effort to prove Mr. Trump's false claims that Democrats stole the 2020 election from him. So, Brianna, it appears Trump will just punish blue states as a whole for, I don't know, for not voting for him, for there being prominent critics of him in leader positions in that state. This area affected by this water project, like we said at the top, was a largely conservative area. You think these folks are feeling great again yet?
I don't think they're feeling great again. I think that they are feeling probably upset because if it's a largely red area, I'm sure a lot of those people actually voted for Donald Trump, and I'm sure that it upsets them that he is not keeping any of his campaign promises. So yeah, but like it's gonna make them suffer. So why would they not be upset? But yeah, this just seems like Donald Trump is punishing blue states for being blue states, essentially. And even though blue states provide most of our tax revenue, so I don't know why he would want to punish the blue states that provide us most of our tax revenue. But I guess he doesn't do things that make sense very often. So,
well, maybe he's punishing the states that produce most of our tax revenue, or maybe he's just, stealing that tax revenue and giving it to his political allies. And, well, I would say places that voted for him, but this place voted for him that's affected by these. Sierra, what do you think's going on here?
I think I don't know enough about what's going on here, other than I know that water is going to be the new oil wars. We are definitely seeing friction in a lot of communities with water resources that are dwindling, and we are actively giving those water rights and resources to corporations and companies to cool data centers, to sell the Resnicks on California aren't cooling data centers, but they sure do on the water. So selling it back to the very communities that they are robbing of water. So definitely probably retribution to blue states. But I think it's got to be that we are just feeding donors. I feel like if you followed the money from where this is, it's got to go back to the donors.
It always comes down to the money in the end, right? So I want to move on to our final U.S. story that I want to make sure we really get into today. And we talked about these authoritarian impulses of Trump, punishing dissenters, punishing states and communities he doesn't like. Well, that is not the only autocratic move he's breaking out of the playbook this week. So this from State Line, quote, the U.S. Postal Service has adopted a new rule that could create doubt about whether some ballots mailed by voters by Election Day will receive postmarks in time to be counted. A USPS rule that took effect on December 24th says mail might not receive a postmark on the same day the agency takes possession of it. The Postal Service says it isn't changing its existing postmark practices and is merely clarifying its policy, but some election officials have looked to postmarks as a guarantee that mail ballots were cast before polls closed. That's what they're for, right? So the new rule holds implications for 14 states and D.C. that count ballots arriving after Election Day if they are postmarked on or before that day, commonly called a ballot grace period. In these states, ballots placed in the mail by voters before the deadline may not be counted if the Postal Service applies a postmark after Election Day. The USPS rule says that the postmark date does not necessarily indicate the first day that the Postal Service had possession of the mail piece. So what good then is a postmark? Is this simply about logistics or a targeted way to chip away at the vote total? And what are the implications for this beyond just mail-in ballots? Now, Tabitha, you are a postal employee. I will not ask you to opine on this, but can you tell me logistically what this means?
Everybody's aware that there are mail delays just in general, right? So I think it would behoove people to just always proceed with caution in advance. So if you have something that you really, really want to get to where it's supposed to be, I would say do your best to mail it like months or weeks in advance. Make sure that you get like a certified tracking number so that you can track it. But just always just act with caution. Like if you really want something to get there, just be really, really conservative about when you mail it.
Yeah, Brianna, this to me looks like an attempt at some. It's election rigging around the edges, right? They're not going to come out and outright rig an election or cancel the elections or say or they're conducted under martial law or something. We're far too sophisticated for that. That's not how these things work. It's you shave off enough here and enough there. What do you think's going on?
Well, I think this is just like you said, another way to try to rig the election. What I think is very interesting about U.S. politics is, in particular, when you start looking at the Republican Party and what they do and what they say, often a lot of the times when they're saying things and accusing the left of doing things, it's because that they are doing those things. And it's been for a while now, Trump has said that the left rigs elections, but that's what this is, because we know statistically people who are doing mail-in ballots are more likely to vote for the Democrat. And so if we make it harder for those people to vote, they are less likely to vote. And if we make it so it's less likely that their vote is counted, well, that makes it better in their mind. This is voter suppression is what it is. And I really think that we need to change the deadlines of when people should put things in the mail, or we need to have ballot drop boxes at city county buildings where there is security, so people can drop their ballot, and it has to be in by a certain time before it to be counted. And that's that, because then we don't have the issue that we had in Colorado where people were setting ballot boxes on fire because they were just like out in a public space. We need to have them protected, because there are people who have ill intentions and that are trying to keep people from voting very actively, whether people want to believe that or not. Like you said, they're not just going to say, we're canceling the election. That's not how dictatorships work. They slowly erode the freedoms and try to give you reasons why they're doing it, so it's logical, so you comply. Do not comply in advance. Keep asking questions and stand up for things like voter suppression when you see it, because this is what this is. It is just making it harder, just like closing the polls early makes it harder to vote. It's just another form of voter suppression that they are trying to give you a logical reason why they have to do it. It's just they don't have enough people, or, you know, it's just how the post office is, or whatever, when they could easily fix this problem if they wanted to. They just don't want to.
Sierra, like, if a postmark doesn't mean anything anymore, like, how do they know you got your taxes in on time? How are, important legal documents supposed to function? I mean, it seems like a minor thing, but this is kind of a bedrock upon which many things rest.
Well, they definitely do not care about society functioning properly. I feel like this last year that has felt like 10 years really has shown that they do not care about how if society functions properly. But I think Brianna was right in that it is a self-report. They say that the Democrats do this. This is a Democrat thing. It is a self-report. It is a them thing. It is voter suppression. Absolutely. My husband and I vote by mail. So like Tabitha saying, make sure that you're conservative and when you get your ballot put in so that this postmark doesn't affect you. It's just another barrier for working class people who are just so busy trying to make ends meet that like the thought of dropping your ballot in the mail even a few days extra early just to make sure that this doesn't interfere with your ability to cast a ballot. It's just another barrier to vote. And it's just another way that they are chipping away at our democracy. And, dictators don't just cancel an election. We are smarter than that by now. But they do win elections by like 98% of the vote. So,
yeah. Tabitha, go ahead.
I think it's important to note also, right? Because I'm from a very red area. And just to remind people that this is your civic duty, right? Like this is your choice. Take this opportunity, like one of the few that you have left, to truly do your research on your candidates, speak your mind through your vote, and, set an alarm in your phone, right? Just set a couple alarms. If you're worried that you might not get it in on time, just put several checks in place for yourself to remind yourself, because this is your duty to your nation.
Right, but here they are. They put the onus on individuals, right? Like, we can't have good systems working. This is how neoliberalism works. Everything, it's the individual's responsibility. You got to get to the post office. You have to go inside and go to the clerk and get a postmark. You can't count on just dropping in the mail. Brianna, you looked like you wanted to say something.
I did. I just want to remind people too that if you want to, because I know that a lot of people are like, I can't miss work. There is early voting at every city county building, usually a month leading up to the election, and there are Saturday times. So if you feel worried or anxious about putting your ballot in the mail, go vote in person. I vote early every time because the lines are way shorter and it's just way easier, and I don't have to miss work, and I just go on a day I have off. It's super easy. You get in and out. Even in Indianapolis, the longest I've ever had to wait was like 15 minutes for early voting, and on election day I've heard it's like 2 hours sometimes. So go early vote if you if you don't want to do it by mail. There are options still. And obviously, I'm sure we will all post about that as we get closer to the elections.
We are going to beat that drum all year here on Progressive Indiana Network, Bree, and we really are going to have to turn out in numbers unseen before because of stuff like this. There is going to be vote attrition. We're going to have to win by more than we actually win by. So there are other stories in U.S. news that we're not going to get a chance to talk to this week. The Department of Justice is parsing through some 5 million Epstein files. They missed their deadline. They're going to keep missing their deadline to follow the law passed by both houses of Congress and signed by the president to release all relevant materials in the files. Also, the Department of Justice says they thwarted a potential ISIS-inspired New Year's Eve attack in North Carolina at the Kennedy Center, which I refuse to call the Trump Kennedy Center. Artists are boycotting over the name change more and more every day, it seems. Now, the president of the center, Rick Grinnell, claims legacy media is encouraging the artists to boycott as if they don't have minds of their own. Also, at the beginning of the week, Trump hosted back-to-back meetings at Mar-a-Lago. First last Sunday with Ukrainian President Zelensky, who they keep stringing along on a peace deal, and then Monday with Israeli Prime Minister and war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu. Links to some of those stories in the show notes, which you can subscribe to over at progressiveindiana.net or at whosleft.us. Let us turn to our Indiana stories this week, and I want to begin on a really sad note. So last week in this space, we talked about the case of R.J. Williams, an autistic kid in Broad Ripple who went missing on December 17th. On Friday, detectives with the IMPD said they believed that Williams fell into the White River after they found his belongings near the river. Cameras in the area show that around 4:40 p.m. on that day, Williams headed down to the dock. In a search of his phone, messages show that he was down on the ice. He sent a message to someone telling them he was down on the ice Saturday. Police said they found Williams' body in the river. Devastating story. And we talked last time. We hoped and prayed that this kid would, turn up and be with his family over the holidays. But I knew as soon as they said they found his stuff near water that things were not looking good. And Tabitha, this is your lane. I want you to speak to this. I have a statistic from Seattle Children's Hospital that shows research that neurodivergent kids are 160 times more likely to die from drowning than their neurotypical peers. Why is that?
Well, they're drawn to water. I mean, if you think about it like this, all of us are made up of what, 70% water? Just every single one of us, irregardless of intellectual ability. So it's part of us. It's everywhere. It's a curiosity. I don't think we should be focusing on consistently the tragedies. Like, it is a horrible tragedy. And I've spoken to his mother. The autism community is pissed. There's a lot of things we can do, but what do we do now? Right. And I think what we should be doing is giving these kids skills. So everyone should learn how to swim, especially autistic children. Like, the likelihood of them, if they can swim, I realize that it's wintertime, there was ice, I realize all that stuff, but give these kids the skills to put in their toolbox to survive. Like, that's what's important. And when we're constantly taking money from these programs and constantly strapping these teachers, these ABA centers that are trying to help these kids, like, early intervention is best. So water safety should be part of that early intervention program. That should be something that all of our kids have access to in schools. But so many children on the spectrum die in retention ponds, in streams, in lakes. It is just obscene. Like, this is a national crisis. And if we don't start to actually put money towards a preventative measure to stop this, it's not going to start with RJ. What I think we should focus on is, this happened in our background area, right? Like, Indianapolis is a capital city in our state. We have a lot of attention on us right now because of the redistricting. Like, let's take this tragedy and turn it to a positive. Like, let's be a state that can lead in some fashion in how we address this sort of stuff, that then we can show other states how to replicate it. It's not good to have a blue envelope program or whatever. Like, all of those things are great, but they're not preventative measures. Like, what do we do at the start? How do we prevent these things? And then, if we are in a situation where we have to look for these children or adults, the need has to be immediate. Like, it was not okay that they started looking for him on the 18th when his mother called and said, listen, he's autistic, he takes medication. Like, we're failing these kids, we're failing these families. And don't think that all the autism moms aren't having a conversation right now about the fact that he's Black, because I guarantee you, if that was a white kid, they would have found that kid. I'm not saying that the kid would have been alive. I really was hopeful, but I'm like you, Scott. I was like, damn it. And I just kept fighting through that damn it reaction, because I instantly felt like everybody's going to fail this kid. And that's how I see it. Like, everybody failed him, because, McDonald's should have released the recording that they had quicker. Like, why do we have to report up to, the higher ups if there's a kid missing, especially if it's someone that's disabled? Like, this should be something that the store managers of any store, like, it should be a mandate. Hey, if someone is going missing in that area and the police contact you, or, some search party, legitimate search party, contacts you about, hey, can we see your footage to try and track this child? It's a no-brainer. Like, these are the type of failures that we have, that what the hell are we doing?
It's disappointing, and you mentioned the different kind of programs that we could put in place for autistic kids, for the neurodivergent community, and we're doing the opposite, right? We're cutting programs meant specifically to help the autism community. We talked about it last week. We've talked about it many times on this show before, and one of the reasons I'm glad we've got you with us as part of this project, Tabitha, is that it's really important we keep talking about these things, and we're going to really make sure there is a lane to talk about those things here under our umbrella. I do have at the bottom of the screen there, I've added a link to a GoFundMe set up to benefit the family of R.J. Williams. It's got to be a hard time for them. They shouldn't be having to worry about the finances of how this is all going to work. I can tell you from personal experience, these things matter. So please, if you can, help out RJ's family at that link down there. So, more bad news for Indiana children. this week. So Hoosier families on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistant Program, or SNAP, will not have the opportunity to take advantage of the federal Sunbucks program next year. The program, which is also known as Summer EBT, offered to low-income families $120 per child to buy groceries in the summer. The state opted into the program in 2024, a move that kept more than 600,000 Hoosier children fed that summer, according to the USDA. The Indiana Family and Social Services Administration Secretary Mitch Robbs said Monday that the state would need to find an additional $5 to $7 million it doesn't have to administer the program this year. It should be noted here, this is me interjecting, that Governor Mike Braun had a personal net worth of some $136 million when he first ran for Senate in 2018. I can't find a more current number, but I'd bet it's only gone up. Maybe we should reach into his pockets or his couch cushions to find that money. Continuing this story from Fox 59, quote, this May, the FSSA announced that Indiana would not participate in the program in 2025. At that time, the FSSA said the Braun administration had discovered that the necessary groundwork had not been completed to launch the program in time for this summer. So then they blamed the Holcomb administration for not partaking in this program. Now they're just basically openly saying, fuck them kids. Sierra, what do you got to say?
Fuck them kids is the mantra of the Braun Beckwith administration. Beckwith being an entirely different bucket. But I digress. Mike Braun does not prioritize children, families. He does not care about Indiana at all. And you can tell that this man comes from wealth. His daddy handed him a company. You can tell that Mike Braun is a Nepo baby who has never had to rely on your school feeding you through the summer because a hot meal is not guaranteed to you at home. It's not always the case for people. And so these Sunbucks, they feed people, children, the most innocent among us, and we can't even take care of the most vulnerable and innocent among us, children. But Mike Braun's main priority has been redistricting, failing at giving anybody property tax relief, and now the 10 Commandments statue outside of the state. It just feels ironic that Braun is very focused right now on getting 10 Commandment statues put outside of the State House, but is not focused on feeding Hoosier children or getting quality and affordable childcare to Hoosier families. Like, I'm seeing a lot of Christianity from this administration, but not a lot of Christ following, the following of Christ's teachings here.
Yeah, we'll come back to the 10 Commandments here later on in the show. But you make a very good point. They certainly don't be appearing to follow. Sierra, you're probably not old enough to remember the "What Would Jesus Do" bracelets, but what would Jesus do? I don't think he would take food out of the mouths of children. And you know what else he wouldn't do? I don't think he would police parents' plates or parents' purchases for their children. So another story along these lines with the Indiana SNAP program. Indiana Republicans, beginning on January 1st, we put into place a plan along with 4 other red states where we are the first, sort of a experimental proving ground, as you will, 18 states to enact waivers prohibiting the purchase of certain foods through SNAP. Now, these efforts are aimed at reducing chronic diseases such as obesity and diabetes associated with sweetened drinks and other treats, a key goal of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Make America Healthy Again effort. The irony with all of the infectious diseases going around because of his vaccine skepticism, but that's neither here nor there. So, retail industry and health policy experts said these state SNAP programs, already under pressure from steep budget cuts, are unprepared for the complex changes with no complete list of the foods affected and technical point of sale challenges that vary by state and by store. And for that matter, research remains mixed about whether restricting SNAP purchases even improves diet quality or health. Health experts worry that the waivers ignore larger factors affecting the health of SNAP recipients. Um, Quote, this doesn't solve the two fundamental problems, which is healthy food in this country is not affordable and unhealthy food is cheap and ubiquitous, end quote. That is Anand Parekh, chief health policy officer at the University of Michigan Public School of Public Health. It seems these rules are being implemented willy-nilly, Bree. You can't buy sports drinks or granola bars or, a rotisserie chicken at the grocery store, but you can buy fruit juice, which is full of just as much as sugar as soda is, potato chips, or ice cream. What's really the point here?
I think the point is to make it more difficult for families to use SNAP because at the end of the day, it's like when you're looking at it, because I'm a speech language pathologist by trade, so I do know some of the dietary research because my specialty is swallowing disorders. So kids who cannot eat by mouth, my job is to help them learn how to safely. So I look at things such as dietary recommendations and research. And one of the things they found, and this is why it's recommended that you give your child all the food at once that they are going to have in a meal and like a sectioned plate, so they can determine what they are going to do with their food. If they eat it, great. If not, that's fine too. But that includes things like cookies, desserts, because we don't want sweets, sugary, refined foods to be looked at as something as a treat, something special. Ooh, it's dessert, because then they want it so much more. This is just playing into that. So this is in no way going to help people be healthier. And it just makes me upset because we will do anything in this country but give our citizens health care, because that's what we truly need. Is if they actually cared about our health, they would give us universal health care. We're already paying for Israel's. Anyone who doesn't know that, our taxes pay for Israel's universal health care when we have zero guaranteed health care. And that is the only true way to help our health in this country, along with investing in healthy foods and bringing the cost of fresh foods down, because it makes no sense that they want us to be healthy, yet they're not doing sunbucks. And so I'm like, oh, good. So they're going to have less money to feed their kid for the summer again. And it's like, too bad. And now you can't get these treats. And it's like, they already have to pay for other things like diapers and toilet paper and cleaning supplies, a bunch of things that SNAP does not cover. This is just going to be another one of these things. It's going to make lines at grocery stores longer because of confusion and issues with the system. And I read somewhere too, it's like the way that they've determined it, it's like some candies still can be bought under SNAP because it doesn't quite fit the definition. So this whole idea is just asinine and not based in evidence at all, because if they had taken the time to talk to somebody who has a master's of dietary science, they would know this. They would know this is a dumb project, but Republicans don't want it to work. They just want people to stop using SNAP. So they want to make it as hard as possible to use it so people just stop applying for it. That is the purpose of this program, not to make people healthy.
Sierra, let me say this first. This doesn't even take into account like food deserts, right? I mean, you may not be able to find fresh, healthy food where you are. So what? You got to go take a whole day off of work. You take a bus, transportation to go to the grocery store in the suburbs or something. They don't have them in your area. All you probably got is a Dollar General, and all they have there is crap. You still need to eat, right?
Yeah, and they don't allow you to use SNAP at farmers markets anymore. We had it for like 1 year that you could go to a farmer's market and use your SNAP benefits so you could buy fresh produce. And of course, we got rid of that because that's actually helpful.
Sierra,
I think it's also, sorry, just real quick. I just wanted to mention, and Brianna would know about this, but ARFID. You know, a lot of kids with autism have ARFID, and they might only eat like 2 or 3 different things. So if those things would fall inside the lines of what other people would consider treats, but that's all they'll eat, and they're also poor, that's not good.
If for some reason the government were ever to prevent us from buying chicken nuggets for our kids, like, children would starve. Sierra, what do you got?
It is definitely just a vibes-based policy. They just want to signal, hey, we are a part of this MAHA movement. We are in line, in step with this. Sugary drinks, bad. And exactly what you said, food deserts. We aren't going to address the food deserts. That's an actual issue over here. We didn't want to materially change people's lives. We weren't after making health of people better. We were really just interested in the vibes. And the vibes are good as long as we say no sugary drinks, look at me go. But like you said, there are some communities here in Indianapolis, like if I drive, 10 minutes down 56th Street, I am now in a food desert where the closest thing that people have is a Dollar General, sometimes a liquor store to get like chips or a soda or something, or they have to drive and make like a day trip to go to the grocery store. But we're not interested in speaking to food deserts and building grocery stores or making healthy food more affordable or even accessible to some of these communities. We are really just interested in vibes, and just it feels good to be like, look, we're healthy, we're MAHA, we're not doing sugary drinks, we don't do red food dyes, look at us go, we care about our people.
Yeah, staying on the MAHA thread there, Sierra. So the Trump RFK experiment with Hoosiers Health continues, as Indiana will receive more than $200 million to invest in rural health care, according to a story from the Indy Star. Part of a 5-year, $50 billion program specifically meant for investing in rural health initiatives as part of Trump's big bullshit bill act passed in July. So all 50 states received some type of grant award from this first $10 billion round, with Indiana's $207 million being roughly the average amount given. Now, this is the same law, the big beautiful bill, that made massive cuts and policy changes to Medicaid in an effort to pay for the bill's trillions of dollars in tax cuts for the wealthy. Senators added this $50 billion rural health fund late in the process to get Republicans on board. We previously discussed Indiana's proposal for rural health care. It's called the GROW Initiative. It's a acronym, when the state's application for this federal program dropped in November. From the Capitol Chronicle, the plan is described as a collaborative effort to be jointly led by the Family and Social Security Services Administration and the Indiana Department of Health. It outlines 12 major initiatives, including a statewide patient transfer hub, significant upgrades to the health information exchange, and large new regional grants intended to reshape how rural healthcare is delivered. Those regional grants would be based upon competition between the different regions of the state. So, I mean, Brianna, it looks like they caused a problem with this massive hole they blew in the budget because of their giant tax cuts, and all the Medicaid cuts that had to be made to pay for it, and then they come up with a half-assed solution.
It's almost like we told them this was going to happen and they didn't listen. I mean, this was projected that this was going to be a problem. So to me, the answer would have been just to extend the ACA subsidies like we told them, because we knew this was going to be an issue. And this is just slapping a Band-Aid on a bigger problem. Again, we are doing everything in our power but giving our citizens health care. We will do anything but that. We will do anything but actually solving the problem. And that is the biggest issue within politics. It's very reactionary and putting a Band-Aid on everything. And they don't seem to have the ability, at least the people in power currently, don't seem to have the ability or don't care to have the ability to look forward and see what the impact of their actions are actually going to be, because they don't care. They're going to be fine no matter what, because they are wealthy. So they're just like, well, oh, they're complaining about healthcare. Well, just throw, couple million over here, couple billion over here, slap a Band-Aid on it. This way only half the people will die instead of all of those people. So maybe then they'll stop bothering us.
Sierra, I don't know, man. The whole the grow thing and the regional competition, we've talked about it here before, but it's given me Hunger Games vibes. And maybe actual Hunger Games. Given our other stories this week.
Yeah, I just don't know how I feel about the Band-Aid solutions constantly for healthcare. Like Brianna said, that we do just slap Band-Aids on it. The ACA was a Band-Aid too. We were promised Medicare for all. We weren't given that. I do think that it is another way. It is the Hunger Games. It's bread and circus. You give somebody just enough bread and just enough circus, right, to keep them docile. It is strange to me that in the wealthiest country on earth that we have healthcare that is tied to people's employment, that we do healthcare this way, when we could look to so many other countries less wealthy than us that do it so much better than us. Or, as Brianna said earlier in the show, we already pay for universal healthcare, not to our citizens, but our tax dollars do fund healthcare for those in Israel. So at least somebody, I guess, is getting it.
Yeah, this special presentation of Circus is brought to you by Bread and Bread Light. Brianna spoke about the move fast and break things ethos, sort of like, well, we're bound and determined to make these tax cuts. We'll figure out the rest later. This is sort of a mindset that permeates Indiana Republicans as well. And the LEAP district in Lebanon is a perfect example of it in many ways. So on Tuesday, this is from WRTV. Despite a bitter cold and between the holidays doldrums, a large group of central Indiana residents packed the North Wayne Elementary School cafeteria to learn more about the LEAP Innovation District and how it could affect Eagle Creek. Well, now, how is that? This LEAP district's out in Lebanon in Boone County. What has it got to do with Eagle Creek? Well, those gathered discussed plans released by Citizens Energy Group to pump water from Eagle Creek Reservoir to Lebanon for the LEAP district, as well as Lebanon Utilities' plans to pump wastewater back into the reservoir from the industrial site. Citizens signed a contract last year with the Indiana Finance Authority to provide the water to Lebanon Utilities after a fast-track plan by the Indiana Economic Development Corporation to supply 100 million gallons of water per day stalled amid backlash from angry residents and state leaders. The original plan, which involved pumping water from the Wabash River to the LEAP project through a proposed billion-dollar pipeline, was shrouded in secrecy. So LEAP stands for Limitless Exploration Advanced Pace. Perhaps too fast. They didn't consider this water problem ahead of time when they were planning this district in the middle of a goddamn cornfield, and now regular Hoosiers have to play whack-a-mole to protect their communities and their sources of drinking water. Tabitha, it seems that the people up in the Lafayette area and who rely on the Wabash River and those aquifers for their water sources, they successfully pushed back on this. Well, now they're going to go find another community to screw. That's what it looks like to me.
Oh, they love to come to rural communities. I drive to Indianapolis frequently, and each time that I drive there are more there's more heavy equipment. You're not quite sure what they're building, but you just see miles of destruction where they're constantly building. And by the time that they're finished, generally is when the residents figure out whatever it is that they're doing. They have tons of backroom deals and all this sort of thing. I remember seeing these, stop stealing our water signs in my area for years ago. I just feel like the legislators are getting trickier and trickier, and they're sliding this stuff in quickly through the back door, if you will. And the residents barely even know about it. But they think they're going to go to these rural communities where people are stupid and they don't have resources, so they can just con them. And because they tend to be heavily Republican districts, they think they'll just roll over. And then they're finding out that there's a lot of hunters and fishermen and outdoorsmen that really, really care about the environment, care about the water quality, and tons of farmers that are like, hold on a second, what are you doing with the water? And then you're going to pump this like toxic water back into areas that we might be getting our drinking water out of. Like, nobody's okay with this. And everybody sees very clearly, like, they see it for what it is. You have these rich people coming in, like, disrupting things, stealing our resources, and giving us shit.
Sierra, do I understand that this is your area? Does this affects you?
Yep, I am one of the 875,000, I believe, Hoosiers that get their drinking water from Eagle Creek Reservoir. So no one has talked to us. No one has, other than community, but no one has talked to us. It is very cloak and dagger. It is also extremely frustrating for me and my neighbors because I live in an area with a lot of immigrants, a lot of different ethnicities. We are a very diverse area in my little slice of Eagle Creek Reservoir adjacent. And so it kind of just feels like that's why they don't care about us. We have, in my neighborhood particularly, we have a strong Muslim community, a strong Arab community. I'm Syrian. So like, it kind of just feels like they were like, oh, that's where all of the less desirable people are. We'll take from their water source. It's disheartening because my husband is from for a little west of Plainfield. So we moved to where I'm from over here, Eagle Creek, to try to get my kids into better schools, the schools that I grew up in, was familiar with. And so it's devastating to hear that they are going to not only take our drinking water, but then they were, like she said, going to pump toxic sludge water back into their wastewater, back into it, full of heavy metals and particulates from these data centers. And they're not going to be transparent about it. They're not going to tell us like, oh goodness, this is actually now slipped into the reservoir, part of your drinking. We can't filter this out. Residents, you guys need to be working on better filtration systems. That they don't care about us. They don't even want to talk to us. And it's just so devastating to know that like I worked really hard to bring my kids to this community just so that they could poison my kids' drinking water.
Boy, it definitely sounds like hearing you describe your neighborhood that those considerations. Maybe it's because it's a diverse community or there's immigrants that this would be a reason that the Republicans find your community a particularly tempting target to exploit for resources for their, it's their investors, their donors, their big business buddies who are building this LEAP district. And our GOP leadership are messing with people's water. They're playing the Hunger Games with rural health care. They're taking foods out of kids' mouths. And Sierra, you brought this up already, but these people have the audacity to call themselves Christians. And this story from the Indy Star. So Governor Braun and Attorney General Todd Rokita announced this week they are pushing to place a monument with the 10 Commandments and the Bill of Rights at the Indiana State House. The pair of Republican elected officials said they are seeking to overturn a 20-year-old court injunction that found the proposed monument's placement on state property to be a violation of the First Amendment's Establishment Clause. The legal challenge was filed on December 29th in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Indiana. The U.S. Supreme Court recently, a couple years ago, overturned a legal standard previously used to find the monument unconstitutional. That decision paves the way for Braun and Rokita to argue the monument would be permitted under the new Christian nationalist threshold. My words. Bringing it back full circle to the beginning of the show, Brianna, if the bedrock First Amendment, you know, the Establishment Clause, the separation of church and state, the one that all the MAGA Trump thumpers really seem to forget about, you know, they love the Second Amendment. And they love to talk about the free speech absolutism so they can spew whatever vitriolic racist bullcrap they want all over my comments section. That they forget about the Establishment Clause. So listen, I asked Sierra this at the beginning of the show, but how about that firm and unshaken Constitution that Chief Justice Roberts likes to talk about?
I mean, I don't understand why they think this is okay. My question to them is when will the monuments for the Quran and the Torah be done? As well as I would like to see a pentagram as well, and any other religious monuments that anyone has in the state, because if we are going to represent one religion, we need to represent them all, including atheism. So if we're going to do one, we need to do them all. If we are not going to do all, then we need to do zero, because we need to be representative of everyone. And we're supposed to have the freedom of and from religion, meaning that the state cannot pick a religion, and picking the 10 Commandments is choosing a religion. It's choosing the Abraham religions. So this is a constitutional violation. Point and simple. I mean, it's plain and simple to me. Republicans seem to have these cognitive acrobats that they like to do to try to make it work for them, because they think they are always correct and have no room in their brain to be able to even consider that there may be another perspective.
It doesn't stop on the State House lawn. It goes into the State House as well. So Representative Michelle Davis, a Republican, wants the 10 Commandments displayed in every classroom in the state. House Bill 1086 is just one of the high alert bills being highlighted on the Mad Voters Bill Tracker at madvoters.org. I encourage all of you to familiarize yourself with that one as we enter the legislative session here on Monday. So this year's session of the General Assembly begins tomorrow. Now, well, technically it's not beginning. They already started it back in December in a failed attempt to redistrict Indiana's congressional maps to please their daddy Donald Trump. But they are coming back from recess tomorrow to begin the bulk of the session, as it were. I've got my eyes on that bill for sure. Tabitha, what are you watching?
They do a really poor job with disability rights. So really any of it that applies to disability, I'll be watching really closely.
Sierra, I don't want to spring this on you because you came in at the last minute and didn't get the homework assignment that I gave the others to have a peek at the bill tracker. But is there anything thematically, you don't have to get into a specific bill, that you're eyeballing at the State House as we enter the 2026 short session here?
I'm honestly interested to see what bills come across, like the 10 Commandments, into the schoolrooms. Because I honestly think that it is so much more than just virtue signaling that we are an awesome Christian nation or an awesome Christian state. I think it speaks more to the plan that they have to take over Indiana with their Christo-fascism. So I'm interested to watch that, honestly. And Beckwith, you see where he pushes that through, because it feels very Beckwith esque, something he will champion for sure.
It is very Beckwithy, which is gross. Yeah. And that is not the only culture war bill. There's plenty of them that Mad Voters are keeping their eye on. Again, great organization. I rely on them immensely. Bree, what do you got your eye on at the State House this session?
Oh, there's so many, because obviously there is still some things coming up about redistricting. I don't know if anyone else saw that, but it's not over because they're still going to be talking about it. They're also talking about making sure that low-income families have access to birth control. That's one I think it's very important, especially with us, having very little access to healthcare, reproductive healthcare in the state. There's also some things about childcare coming through that's going to be very important, because in case anyone doesn't know, the state has said there will be no new childcare vouchers until at least 2027. If you're pregnant right now, too bad, you are out of luck if you need that help. I think they're really trying to force women back in the home with these initiatives. So I am paying attention to those as well. And obviously I'm also paying attention to anything that has to do with first steps and disabilities, along with Tabitha, just because of the nature of my work. And I also have family members who have disabilities, as well as I have a hearing disability myself. So
when you mentioned the tough luck to with the childcare vouchers, no new ones to be issued till at least 2027, and that's at least. It could be God knows. However, past that, I'm the old guy here, so maybe only I remember this, but there was a show out of Chicago, a clown called the Bozo Show, right? And there was a little game at the end. Every show, one kid, they got picked to come do the Bozo buckets, and you had to toss the ball, and the first one, and you get to 6, you win the grand prize. I don't know, it was a bike or something. But the point is, the show was hugely popular when there were only 4 channels on the TV back when I was a kid. And you had to get on the wait list to go on the Bozo Show. It was like a dozen years long. And that is what it reminds me of. Like, oh, you wanna have a child in Indiana? You want child care? Well, you better plan about a dozen years ahead. So, finally, this week, a little bit of light news, a little bit of sports, a little bit of good news. Indiana football beat Alabama in the Rose Bowl game for their first bowl win of any kind since 1991. Only their 4th bowl win ever, and their very first Rose Bowl win. They will advance to a rematch from an earlier game this season against Oregon. That will be down in Atlanta at the Peach Bowl this coming Friday. As an IU grad and alum, good to see. Big stuff. I never thought I, down here in Bloomington, would be living in the center of the college football universe. We really are truly living in the upside down. Brianna, you woot-wooted. Are you an IU grad yourself?
No, but my family has lived here my whole life and have always been IU fans. My spouse, he has an MBA from IU, so I am just an IU fan. My siblings went to Purdue, so of course I'm going to root for IU. So I've always been an IU fan. Go Bisons. I think they're going to win on Friday.
Yeah. Sierra, you're currently an IU student?
Yes, I was very excited.
Filled with school spirit?
Yeah, it's exciting to be filled with school spirit for once this year. It's been a hard year for IU, so it was exciting. I felt great about it until I got on Facebook, saw all of my friends, teachers, everyone's so excited. Then I got to Micah Beckwith's Go IU, and it was a very much like this Mean Girls moment where it was like, she doesn't even go here.
Does Hillsdale College have a football team?
I don't.
No, they do not. But look, we really are truly living in the upside down anymore. I think where IU football is on top of the universe. My mom is originally from Buffalo, New York, and I'm convinced that this is the Bills' year to win the Super Bowl because we're living in the upside down. And of course, the downside is that we'll probably have Trump be coronated king for life on July 4th or something. I don't know. Um, is it worth it? Tabitha, thoughts?
Well, I'm always the one to say different stuff. And what I would say, because this is what I always try to do with young people, is I try and get them to use whatever influence they have to give back. So, what I would love to see is now that this football team is getting so much recognition, maybe they can go and volunteer with some kids, draw some attention to the childcare situation. Maybe some of their parents benefited from some of these programs that now these people are representing Indiana in a positive way. So I'd just like to see a lot more from these athletes. Everybody has a different skill, but find one that you can then bring things back to a positive nature and use your influence.
Like I said, as an IU fan and a long-suffering IU football fan, it is, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun. It's new and unusual and exciting in that way. I would still gladly go back to going 2-11 every year and getting our asses kicked by Ohio State. If we could, I don't know, have democracy in America, but what are you gonna do, baby? Um, hey, we're actually kind of wrapping up on time this week. Let's close this thing out, and I'm gonna have each of you tell us where the good folks can find you on social media besides at Progressive Indiana Network. Brianna, where can folks find the Recovered Republican?
Yeah, you can find the Recovered Republican on most social media sites. We're on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And then we have the longer form podcast version, which is on Substack, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. All of them are under some form of the Recovered Republican. And that is me. I post interviews with candidates, and leftist ideals is kind of what I push, obviously being in the Progressive Network, and just trying to educate people about things that I think are important in Indiana or in the country so that people are paying attention to those important topics.
100%. And how about you, Tabitha? Where can the folks find you?
On all the socials, Tabitha Zeigler or Staring Down the Storm, Autism Advocacy in America. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. And we just lean heavy on the advocacy and the authenticity. So, come and visit.
Very good. Sierra, do you have any handles you want to share with the folks?
You have them on screen. I'll be over at PIN. That's where you can find me for now. And if I haven't worn out my welcome, maybe here again someday.
Oh, no, listen, it was great to have you. I love getting a chance to do these. I also love getting a chance to hang out with a bunch of women on a Sunday morning. It's a good time. Me, old Scott over here, you can find on the socials at Who's Left on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. It is the same as my website, who'sleft.us. And of course, you can find all of us on the Progressive Indiana Network. That is progressiveindiana.net. Our handles are on the side of the screen there conveniently for you, but the good folks listening to this later on the audio version, our handles are Progressive Indiana Network on most sites, on X, on Blue Sky, on TikTok. It is at PIN Indiana, PIN Indiana. And that will conclude our show this week. So, on behalf of my guests today, Brianna Newhart, Tabitha Zeigler, and Sierra Martin, I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.